Hello and welcome to Inside Edition, where we discuss national, regional and international issues in depth. The Kingdom of Bahrain's economy is the most diversified in the GCC region, with particular strength in financial services, technology sectors, manufacturing and logistics. It offers remarkable investment opportunities within a supportive business environment designed to give businesses of all sizes the opportunity to thrive. In 2018, Flat 6 Labs, which is the MENA region's leading seed and early stage venture capital firm, made its sixth regional expansion by launching a new phase of its renowned seed program dedicated to serving both local and global entrepreneurs in Bahrain. To know more about its role and services, we are pleased to be joined here in the studio by the Managing Director of Flat 6 Labs, Mr. Saleh Abbas, right after this. Welcome back. Joining me in the studio is Managing Director of Flat 6 Labs, Mr. Saleh Abbas. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Flat 6 Labs has had its debut in Bahrain for a while now, covering a lot of aspects when it comes to the entrepreneurships on the technological arena in Bahrain specifically. Can you give us an idea about the establishment of Flat 6 Labs as well as the main goals and its structure?
Sure. So Flat 6 Labs Bahrain, initially we launched in early 2018. And our main goals, we were launched with the support of our partner Tamkeen. And the main goals were to be able to create startups. Initially, it was to create 44 startups over the course of 3 years. Right. Currently, we've hit 50 startups. And the whole idea behind it is to be able to address the current gap that we have in the startup ecosystem across, not just in Bahrain, but across the region. And that's to help them overcome three of the major challenges that a lot of people face when they have a good idea and they want to enter entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So how we do that is, in brief, we provide capital to help them finance initially the startup. Right. And then we also provide mentorship in the form of our accelerator program. And thirdly, we supply them with a very strong and extensive business development network, not just here in Bahrain, but also throughout the Middle East and North Africa.
That's great. The reach is far. What are the forms? I mean, you mentioned some of the forms of support that Flat 6 Labs provides, but when you talk about the three main problems that they might face, what are these problems initially? Where do they show, basically?
So initially, the problem is that if you look at traditional financing, it's very difficult for people to be able to get access to capital when they have they're just in an idea phase, or maybe they're even just working on a software or something of that nature, and especially when it doesn't fall under traditional business genres. Okay. And so the role of accelerators has become very prominent over the past 10 years or so. Initially starting off in Silicon Valley and the States, and then now it's extended across the world, and almost every country you'll find that there's an accelerator. And so it's that, and it's also having the relative know-how. So, a lot of people, they face major challenges, especially when it comes to digital focused businesses, because you're in a whole new realm of your way of conducting businesses, how you go about customer acquisition. The financial model is completely different. And having the right sort of mentorship who understand that and understand how to scale the business is essential to try and reduce the failure rates when it comes to startup disruptive businesses. And then more specifically, especially here within the region, having a strong network is extremely important, especially when it comes to not just doing business within your own country, when it comes to trying to do business across the region and scale into different markets. Every country has a different set of regulations and a different way about getting licensing. And so due to our extensive network, because we are the largest accelerator network in the Middle East and North Africa, it means that we have teams similar to myself in each of those countries, and an office where it's very easy, once you've hit your product market fit, for example, here in Bahrain, to then be able to scale into Saudi, into Egypt, into UAE, and you have our resources at hand, which is our team who have local expertise, and also the ability to be able to have your own office space, and they'll set up a lot of the essential meetings and save what could be a 9-month to 1 year process of scaling into that market, and reduce it down to about 3 months. an example of this that's actually come over to Bahrain recently is from our Tunisian portfolio, and it's called Go My Code. And so they had raised a substantial amount of funding, and it was to address in the Arab world of being able to educate a lot of the youth into software development, which is heavily needed. And so, they contacted us, and within the space of 3 months, we were able to help them secure their commercial registration, give them an office space, and then even be able to hire, the best local talents so that they could actually be operational with 3 months of that conversation.
That's amazing. I mean, these concepts are things that fit into any kind of demographic, not just like the Bahrain or the Tunisian one. As you said, the demographics of the regions are very different when it comes to from country to country. They're all Arab countries, but they're extremely different when it comes to the actual demographics, looking at the number of youth, the number of people working or adults working, and even the ideas that fit the country itself. So my question to you is are there projects that, I mean, you mentioned the Tunisia one, are there projects that were started in Bahrain that fit into other demographics from the countries around you?
Yeah, there is. A good example would be a Bahraini female founder that we have called Mina Bachiri, who started up a business which was originally called TELP, which started off as a tutor mentoring platform, and has now pivoted on into a fun sort of educational mix with entertainment form of a platform to the youth, which is scaled across the whole of the GCC. We've also got other incredible success stories where we have another company called the Arabic Digital Reform Institute. And what they've done is they've created a platform where their main focus is to create translation of research articles and academic publications into the Arabic language, which there's always been a massive gap and need for. And so their goal is to create one of the largest mass translations of educational content in Arabic that's ever occurred. And so right now they have multiple ongoing projects, which is also going throughout the GCC. That's
amazing. Even vice versa. I mean, we do have a lot of Arabic research topics that haven't been tackled yet. Well, it is definite that Flat 6 Labs has a number of accomplished projects that are considered stories of success. We mentioned the ones in Bahrain and in Tunisia. Do you think some of the upcoming projects that you have show that glimmer of success that you see might be coming up?
For example, we've got other companies who are proving really interesting case studies, which one of them, they're called Sync. And the founders are originally from New Zealand, so literally almost the other part of the world, and they flew over to Bahrain. They went through our acceleration program. They set up their headquarters here 3 years ago. They're still here, and they've also proven that they were able to build a large software development team purely out of Bahraini youth. And now their main market is in the USA. So even though they're headquartered here, they're proving that they can compete with some of the biggest players over in the most competitive market in the world. And they're also showing the advantages that Bahrain offers as a startup ecosystem, a soft landing point to be able to have your operations globally. And a lot of that was also thanks to the credits of a lot of the progressive subsidies and other programs we have in place to make it easier for startups to be able to grow their team and to scale.
That's amazing. My next question to you before we go into the more specifics of Flat 6 Labs, did the pandemic in any kind of way affect the number of ideas that came out? Was there like an increase, a decrease, a sustainability kind of road that you see?
I would say initially, one of the biggest changes, and it was positive overall, was that you found a lot of our startups, they were challenged because now they were dealing with having to do everything virtually or digitally or remotely, for example. And so we saw a lot of our strongest startups make major pivots, and pivots that actually led them to better revenue generation, a more efficient form of conducting their business. And so I'd say out of it, the silver lining was that it really sort of has caused a mass rapid digital transformation. Adoption of digital businesses has been great over the past year and a half. And it's also, I think, made a lot of traditional investors start to really evaluate the feasibility of getting into venture capital and to start, investing in these non-traditional businesses, which before, typically we were always looking at investment going into real estate and retail and these kind of traditional sectors. And during the pandemic, not just here, but globally, everyone saw a boom in these tech businesses that were largely unaffected by, not having these physical boundaries around them.
Right. Whenever I do a show after the pandemic started, there's always a different story on how Bahrain was already prepared digitally to basically support businesses and as well as support institutions like hospitals and everything like that. Do you feel that Bahrain's digital infrastructure really did support businesses or startup businesses that you guys support?
Yeah, definitely. Bahrain's led a lot of support to our digital businesses. Like I said, even it wouldn't be possible for us to even be here and to be doing the work we're doing right now without the support of Tamkeen, and especially also the Bahrain Economic Development Board played a major role in our initial launch. And they've also worked progressively with regulators. To go into detail with that would be, on basically the financing methods and the way that contracts are done are very different in our business. And being able to keep up with that as a regulatory authority is essential to making us competitive. And that they've definitely managed to do, especially also in the fintech space. If you look at the Central Bank of Bahrain and the fintech sandbox that they've created, it's resulted in now, one of the companies is Rain, which isn't under our portfolio, but a great success story for Bahrain, where they've scaled massively over the past year and a half. I believe now they employ over 100 Bahrainis, but that's what I've heard. I'm not an official representative of them. But they're a good example of how they are the major cryptocurrency exchange now in the GCC, and that's largely been enabled only due to the progressiveness of the CBB and the regulatory authorities in creating that fintech sandbox and being able to allow them to execute quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, even the digital banking concepts, whether it's Benefit, ILA, or any of these banks that really support these kind of ventures. Now, the Crown Prince's International Alumni Association and Flat 6 Labs have recently launched a very remarkable innovation challenge. What can you tell us about its aspects, its goals, and the participation?
And so we're really proud of this initiative and collaborating with the Crown Prince Alumni Association. And mainly what we're aiming to do is that every year we're going to have a 1-month program where it's applicable to all candidates. They don't just have to be alumni from the Crown Prince Scholarship Program. And its aim is just to help teach them along the way of ideation, how to get product market fit, how to do their financial modeling, along with other topics where they could come up with a viable startup pitch. And then after that, we plan to help and support the top winners of this competition, and see hopefully it carry into successful startup businesses. And as each year grows, we hope to see the number of candidates grow and to mainly do this as a support initiative to the community.
Fabulous. Can you tell us a little bit about the participating teams?
Yeah, so the participating teams in this are largely new to entrepreneurship, and a lot of them, are still in university itself, or some of them are freshly graduated. And they cover a broad spectrum, so it's sector agnostic, and we allow them to come and approach any kind of industry that they would like. And so in general, it's really sort of a pre-acceleration program of trying to build up talent that could then go on into accelerators and receive financing, and then hopefully produce a viable, scalable startup.
Right. Well, in performing its duties, Flat 6 Labs deals and cooperates with various public as well as private institutions. What can you tell us about these collaborations, and how does it contribute to achieving the goals that you have set?
So collaborations are essential to us, and we've done that before with community engagement and trying to ensure that one of our biggest challenges is always met, which is to be able to continue to have a viable pipeline of Bahraini youth and talent to come into the entrepreneurship field. And the way we've done that is to collaborate with organizations such as Mashrui or Injaz, as well as the universities, and work with their business programs to sort of make sure that they're geared towards business models that are viable today within the startup field, and have them at a point where they would literally be able to, rather than it just being theoretical, they would be able to walk into the office of a venture capital investor and be able to have a pretty strong pitch and be considered viable to receive financing. Right. So we've seen a tremendous amount of improvement over the past 3 years. And the level that everyone was at in 2018 to where they are today at 2021 has improved dramatically.
Yeah. When you keep mentioning, programs or let's say ideas, ventures that apply to today's world, what are the ventures that you look for when you have a new client coming in, or if you have a new entrepreneur coming in, and what are the standards that you put? What do you want to see?
Well, essentially what we want to see is that there's a strong team behind the idea, because in our field, execution is everything. A lot of people have good ideas, but the number of people that succeed in scaling it to the point where it's a household name is extremely rare. And so we want to see that the team have kind of complement each other's skill sets. For example, if one founder is very strong on the business front, we would like to see another founder who's very strong on the technical front of development. And it's good when we see that they have some form of relevant experience within the vertical that they're addressing, whichever industry that they're planning to go and disrupt. And another thing is that we're on the lookout for people that are addressing gaps that we feel we could specifically assist and help them grow with through our network. The stage, we've had a varied mix. We've had some people that they're already in the market, some people that they're prototyping and building the product, and we've even had a few who they're just at idea phase. And it all depends on the whole combination and how sure we feel about the viability of this being able to be a successful business.
Perfect. When we talked about the cooperations you have, you mentioned your cooperation with Tamkeen. Are there any projects that you guys are taking care of where you're cooperating with governmental institutions or private institutions to support them to launch the projects?
Could you repeat that?
We talked about the cooperations that you have with different entities, whether private or public.
Yeah.
Are there any projects right now or ventures right now where you're cooperating with a public or a private institution within Bahrain to launch?
Yeah, right now we have a few initiatives planned where we'll be supporting the Hope Fund, which is a great initiative that's being led by the Ministry of Youth. Yeah. And that's its sole aim is to be able to help upskill the Bahrain youth and talent into being the next viable pipeline of entrepreneurs. Yeah. And so we look forward to doing multiple initiatives with them and playing a pivotal role in supporting growing a new form of entrepreneur for future generations.
Perfect. So after a period of dedicated efforts, how does Flat Six Labs assess their successes?
So we continually support all our startups. We like to always say that we're an early stage VC with an acceleration program. You get some accelerators where they do offer support to the startups, but they aren't invested in the actual startup financially. Mm-hmm. And so naturally, the success of these startups are pivotal to our success. And what happens is that even after the program, which is lasts about 4 months of acceleration, we then have monthly meetings with them to see that they're on track, to see how we can support, whether there's any way we can leverage our network or even help them secure further investment from other investors, which is also an important way of us validating our choices. Yeah. So naturally we invest in the company, but until an external investor has come in, that's where we really see that we've succeeded. And till date, our startups have raised over $3 million US, and we're looking on track to have a very successful portfolio. As far as we've had a ratio of around 50% that have received follow-on funding from external investors.
Inshallah, that's amazing. Flat Six Labs not only has its office here in Bahrain, but we've talked about it in Tunisia, Egypt, and Jordan. Is there some sort of a collaboration between all of these offices when it comes to the success of your ventures?
Yeah, especially when it comes to scalability. So, there's a lot of times when our companies are doing business development, for example, with a company like the Arabic Digital Reform Institute, they would need to get in touch with educational institutions across the region.
Right.
And having our people on the ground meant that they were being able to be introduced through warm introductions directly to them in meetings. This also improves the success rate of having successful business development meetings, as well as the fact that it's also serves as office space and a network that you can access at any time that you wish. And so that's sort of our main value add we find as Flat 6 Labs, is that because we have the largest network, it makes us the most relevant for companies that want to scale within the region. Similar to our conversation about Go My Code, it just reduces the time frame excessively. And also, we usually might find that there are some synergies. So we might have startups that could complement each other and work together. Our portfolio now is over 320 startups, which is also the largest in the region. And it also sometimes occurs where there are certain corporates looking to do an exact initiative, and perhaps the managing director in Egypt will contact me because he'll know of a startup within our portfolio here in Bahrain that would be a viable candidate for it. So it just kind of increases the overall opportunities, and it reduces the failure risk.
Yeah. I mean, one of the really most important things when it comes to startups is the community around these kind of startups. How do you support community awareness or community education about your startups?
So the way that we've done that is we've tied in with multiple societies, engineering societies, developer societies, Bahrain Business Women's Society, and we work with them in different forms of collaboration. One was that, pre-COVID, actually we always offered our office space, which is in the MBB Tower in Bubble, Bahrain, access for anybody that's looking to try and do anything related to a positive community initiative, so that they have a space there, and we would support them even if they needed some external factors, whether it would be simple like catering or other forms. And it was really because we understood that beyond us just trying to invest in viable startups, is that we need to play a pivotal role in growing the overall community and startup ecosystem. And so another initiative that we do, which is to try and address women's entrepreneurship, is that we have a lot of content that we work on. So we do panel discussions, webinars that try to aim at the right kind of content to help women understand how they can get into entrepreneurship. If they have any kind of challenges they think they would face, we do seminars specifically around that. And we also tap into our network of female founders who have already been through all of that and have succeeded to be able to, address any questions that they may have. We also work closely with the Royal Women's University and the Supreme Council of Women. And so we try to make sure that we have each demographic addressed. Yeah.
When it comes to the sustainability of these startups, what are like the factors that you put for your clients or for the people starting these startups in order to keep their ventures sustainable over the years?
I mean, largely what we do is we try and make sure they have all the tools that are necessary. So touching on the forms of support we offer, along with the mentorship, which is the 3-month program, a lot of the times we have different forms of mentorship. So there would be a mentorship more like in a lecture format, similar to when you're at university, which would be sessions of the entire startup cohort. But then there's other specific coaching sessions, as well as we have industries, VIPs usually, that are the leaders within their industry, who will come on and become a one-on-one mentor, and that relationship will last long after the actual acceleration program. So these are some of the forms. The other way is through perks. So a lot of things that would pertain to them having a higher operating expenditure, we try and lower. So one is not having to rent an office and be able to have their CRs under our address. Another one would be the perks that we offer. So we have over $300,000 worth of perks that they can avail from. And this covers the kind of software of a broad range that would pretty much cover everything that a business needs, especially a digital one. Another thing is we have a close partnership and tie-in with Amazon Web Services. And nowadays, as you know, like every business is hosted on the cloud.
Yes, it is.
And they give us over $25,000 worth of credits, which is a huge help to the startups as well. So, you know, this overall package means that, you know, the expertise mitigates the chance of them actually making as many mistakes. Also, they have a longer financial runway due to the fact that they can avail from these perks. And then one of the things that we do extremely intensively is try and constantly have updates with them, which we can then relay to our venture capital network throughout the GCC. You know, being the largest early stage portfolio comes with the benefit that it's a recognized brand amongst all the venture capitalists in the region. And it means that we can already kind of open the door, which is very difficult a lot of the times for aspiring startups to be able to sit down and get you know, a one-on-one 30-minute session where they'd be able to pitch their business, and whether it receives investments or not, they always get extremely valuable feedback on, you know, what they can adjust to then be financially viable for investment.
All right. Before I go to my last question for today, we talked about how the pandemic accelerated some of your startups, but the pandemic did take an effect on all countries of the world, whether it's businesses. We've seen a lot of them close down. We've seen a lot of things happen when it comes to financial support, when it comes to even people with physical entities where you have to go there, where they had to enlist or put new kind of rules. How did the pandemic affect in a negative way these startups, and how did you get out of that phase?
I think the negative circumstances were for, you know, some of our startups, which they relied heavily on you know, the physical aspect of events occurring and things of that nature. And you know, one of the strong examples we have was a business called Ecolati. And so they initially were focused on being able to cater to events, corporate events, family events, big families that have Eid and things of that nature. And naturally this impacted them. But then what we found with a lot of businesses, even going into the sports industry and other things similar where there's a big offline aspect, was that they then found a different focus to pivot to. And with them it started to be, you know, bulk supply of goods. And they ended up having a larger revenue generation. So, you know, it was, although there was negative aspects, there's always a way to sort of take a strong look and find another angle to approach, and usually out of that it comes innovation, which is what startups all about. And true startups, usually you'll find that they pivot multiple times and sometimes end up in a completely different form of what they were originally, but they persevered, they have a stronger team because of it, they have more knowledge of how to face challenges, and they'll also have a greater revenue generation. So
that is how your ventures got affected by the pandemic. But how about Flat 6 Labs? How did they get out of this whole pandemic situation where nobody knew really what's going to come next and what are we going to see in the future? How did Flat 6 Labs get out of it?
Yes, so we found ourselves in the same situation where we had to sort of innovate and figure out how to conduct ourselves in a completely different manner, as a lot of things we did were also very physical. You know, all the sessions, they used to take place in our office. Our demo days, which are one of our biggest value adds, where, you know, it's sort of the end of the program and we're showing everybody this is the polished product or service after they've been through the program. And it's our way of, you know, raising awareness amongst the public, and investors used to always be held at venues like Ritz-Carlton, for example, and you know, would be a big sort of coming together of the ecosystem. And so then when we found ourselves in the pandemic, we realized we need to find a way to be able to still deliver and still have the same value to our entrepreneurs and even exceed it if possible. So what we did was we switched to having a high-end studio production instead of a live delivery of the demo day, for example. And we also became experts at understanding how to do targeted digital marketing and being able to spread the word to the point where we were getting in contact with angel investors and VCs after premiering the event live online through YouTube and Facebook by VCs and angels that we weren't aware were currently in the region. And our reach extended from events here, which were already completely overbooked at around 400 to 500 people, in a physical venue, where we on YouTube we're hitting around 25,000 views. So bringing a lot of attention and awareness as far as potential clientele, and also to investors, and also to the country, by being able to have so much of a broader reach. Now, pre-pandemic, I don't think we would have thought of putting that kind of effort and thought into the digital format. And another thing was that due to us no longer being able to conduct sessions physically in the office, we realized that although our main concern was people wanting to be engaged in a virtual format, the additional value was that we no longer were geographically restricted to the expertise. So what we did was we ended up building a global, world-class portfolio of mentors, and being able to increase the quality of our sessions. So in everything, there's always a silver lining. It's just about being able to be strategic and see the positive aspects of how you can adjust.
Absolutely. This actually brings me to another question that we touched on but didn't really talk about. Flat Six Labs represents a lot of startups, whether in technology. What are the different areas that you support? I mean, you have a gaming company that you're supporting as well. So what can you tell us about the types of projects that you have right now, the ventures you have right now? Who can come?
So, we're sector agnostic, so we're happy to get into all verticals. Nowadays we've started to look a lot at e-commerce solutions, fintech solutions. Prop tech is something really big because, the real estate sector here is huge and in rapid need of digital transformation as well. And in general, there's nothing that we wouldn't consider. A lot of people think that we're purely only looking at technology-based businesses, but for us, it's about innovation. So there are other businesses that we would consider if we felt that they've got a creative approach to how they're doing business.
Well, what can you tell us about Flat Six Labs' upcoming plans and future projects here in Bahrain?
So, we continue to strive to, support our portfolio of startups, and also to then plan and grow the portfolio for the future. We hope for years to come to be investing in future startups within the country, and to continuously improve, as a provider of acceleration, but also to be able to continue expanding our network and our offerings, and to be able to even at some point look at having higher financing towards the startups and other forms of support that we can lend to them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And for answering our questions. And we'd like to thank you, dear viewers, for watching us, and we'll see you next week in another episode of Inside Edition.